Hey, we're live, we're live. We're live. Stream settings, stream URL. Here we go. Okay. Everyone. Classic.
No, it just says I've got to do work. God damn it. Oh well.
Classic. I'm streaming a workshop. It's fine. I just started. Hi everyone, for people just joining us. I'm going to be doing the CV workshop with you all today. I'm going to be answering any questions that you might have about getting job ready, getting your portfolio pieces on there, and what to demonstrate when going for a junior developer role. I'm just going to wait a few minutes and let people filter into the live stream. If people do have any questions at any point, feel free to ask either in the live chat. I'll also be periodically going back to Slack as well to see if there's any questions in there. I think we're still waiting for a few more people. I seem to think there's going to be about 16 people, I think, in project phase. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, it's going to wait a few minutes for all those people to filter in. I'll then reintroduce the session and talk a little bit about myself and what we'll be talking about today, okay? If anyone's got any questions at any point, don't hesitate to just drop me a question in the live chat and I'll address it as we go, okay? Cheers. I think there might be no sound just because I'm not talking, Katie, or I'm trying to keep very quiet. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, let's just make sure everyone can see and hear exactly what it is that I'm streaming before we get started with material. There's no sound, he's just not talking at the moment. I'm very good at keeping quiet, apparently. Mime the whole lecture. Sign language, perhaps? I think there was roughly about a 30-second delay. I'm sure you're probably used to it. You've done a fair few of these lectures at this point, but just, yeah, bear that in mind. I'm a little bit quiet. Okay, let's try and turn the microphone a little bit. Okay, so I've just made an amendment to that now. Is that okay? People hear me okay? How can people hear me now? Is that good? So it's got 11 concurrent viewers. I think we're expecting a couple more, so I'm just going to wait a few more minutes and then we'll jump in, okay? Okay, good to hear. Thanks. It's up to 12 people now. Just whenever, say, 30 seconds, and we'll get started, okay? I'm not very good at this live streaming thing. I don't really know what to fill dead space up with. Harry asks, I hope everyone is enjoying self-isolation. I'm fortunate enough that when my housemate moved out to move in with his partner, that he left me his desk, not permanently, I don't think, at least. So I've actually got somewhere to work at and put my monitor, so it makes it a lot easier. Prior to that, I was working at a breakfast bar, so yeah, quite uncomfortable and not really what you want to be set out for a full day. But yeah, much better since I've had a desk. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to just start introducing the session, what we're looking to get out of it, and I suppose myself as well. So today we'll be going through the CV workshop. We'll be talking about what sort of things that we want to include on our developer CV, how to showcase our skills with portfolio pieces, talk about our experiences at Northcoders, make them personal to us, tell a story, make it unique, and also not assume any sort of prior knowledge on behalf of companies about what Northcoders is and the coding bootcamp. The reason I'm qualified to talk about something like this is prior to doing the bootcamp myself about 2.5 years ago, I was working in recruitment for software developers. It's one of the reasons I heard about bootcamps in the first place. A lot of the companies I was working with hired their junior developers from bootcamps very similar to Northcoders, realized it was a legitimate way of getting into the software development industry. Heard about Northcoders. My family are originally from up north. I was currently down in London at the time, so it was a great opportunity not just to move back up here, but also to live somewhere a little bit cheaper. While I was doing the course, was offered a role in the partnerships team when I first graduated. So I was working in that role for a while. Most of you will know me from working in the admissions side of things with Madison. I've recently moved back over to the partnership side of things, so I'll be speaking to companies about the great work that you all do. Obviously, chatting to the students about how to basically put our best foot forwards when applying for roles. Obviously, update you on what is currently going on in the industry and world, and basically just asking any questions that you might have. Cool. So one of the reasons I was telling that nice story about myself isn't just to I suppose lend some credibility to what I'll be saying today, but also to emphasize the importance of telling a story. So what people are looking for is basically for you to sell yourself by telling a narrative about who you are, why you wanted to learn to code, what made you want to do a coding bootcamp, and where you see yourself going afterwards. Yeah, it's as much as about selling that story and journey and making it unique to you. Going into roles as junior developers, we're all going to have very similar levels of experience and portfolios to talk about. So it's really about talking about you and helping people visualize where you're going to fit into that organization. Whoops. So I just dropped my phone there. Don't mind that. So yeah, what we're going to be doing is talking about how we can demonstrate on our CV and also, I guess, make it more unique to our experiences. Obviously, there is some classic points and rules of CVs that we'll be looking to apply to what we'll be doing today, such as trying to keep it to ideally no more than 2 pages. Readability is obviously really important. We've got to bear in mind that whoever is the first person that is reading our CV may be looking at 50, 100 CVs every single day. So we want to make it really clear for them to pull out all the relevant information. So things like bullet points can often be good for that. And I would say get all of the key points that you want to make. So talk about your technical skills, experience, and there's portfolio pieces on the first page. And make sure you have a good level of attention to detail. As I'm sure you're all very well aware of doing coding and the bootcamp for a while at this point, attention to detail is key. It can be something as simple as missing a brace, or a comma that could just cause your code not to work. We need to demonstrate a similar level of attention to detail in our CV. So things like spell mistakes, grammatical errors, all that sort of stuff. We need to really make sure we're not including anything like that. I'm going to suggest as well, don't have any gaps in your CV. It's an instant red flag for potential employers. You don't need to have lots of detail about irrelevant roles, but just include something like job title, time period worked at a company, and the name of the company that you worked at. If you do have gaps in your CV because you were either taking a career break, currently just looking for a new role, or perhaps you were doing something like traveling, or just training for something like a boot camp like Northcoders, just put something in there like traveling, career break, studying, something like that. It's always better to have something than nothing. I would suggest in that gap, simply because when you do go to an interview with a company, you want to spend that time in the interview, that 40 minutes, that hour that you've got, talking about your experiences, not about the lovely time that you went on holiday to Southeast Asia or something like that, right? Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at a couple of example CVs. I'm going to point out sort of key areas and things that you'll want to include on there. And as I was saying before, if people do have any questions at any point, feel free to just jump in and I'll be happy to answer them, okay? Cool. So, if you can actually make it forwards, here we go. So, all these CVs will follow a similar pattern. Some sort of rules that apply to all CVs, but some things that will apply specifically just to developer CVs. So we just have a standard electrician CV here. As with any other CV, it's really important that we include a little bit about ourselves in the first section. So going back to what we were saying about the very start, telling a story about yourself, it's who you are, what you're doing. So I generally suggest something along the lines of junior developer, recently graduating the software development coding bootcamp, Northcoders. Don't make any assumptions that the person reading your CV knows what Northcoders is or has ever heard of us before. Really sort of spell out what it is and what you learned, both in this top section, but also when you get into the experience bit and talk in a little bit more detail about the bootcamp itself. Reason being, the person that's reading your CV might not just recruit for development roles, they might recruit for every role in an organisation. So make their lives easy. And talk a little bit about who you are, why you got interested in Learn to Code, where you're currently at. So I would generally ask people to say they've recently graduated the bootcamp. Reason being is it saves you having to go and amend and change the tense of everything in your CV when you graduate. And talk about the type of role you're looking for after the course. What I generally ask people to do is not get too specific about a type of role. So what I mean by this is don't say I specifically want to be a front-end developer or I specifically want to be a React developer, but just say something along the lines of working in a company where you can continue learning, personal development, work in a team of ambitious developers, an organisation with great training, personal development, something like that, right? Because it kind of leads into telling a story about why you chose to do a boot camp and your goals. Cool. Obviously, we need to have contact information in that CV. I would generally suggest these days having an address on there isn't relevant. Simply being because if you are open to relocating for a role, it's going to end up discrediting you from a position that you may otherwise be able to interview for. Phone number and email is fine to include. I'll leave that up to you, just generally. So it depends how willing you are to take speculative calls from people like recruiters. Generally speaking, any role that you apply directly for anyway and send a CV to, they will have your contact details, be it just an email address or potentially a phone number as well. So yeah, it's really up to you. And any sort of social media that you have, this person's obviously included LinkedIn. I would strongly suggest including links to things like GitHub, any projects that you worked on, in addition to the Northcoders portfolio pieces that we'll talk about in a moment. What we ask you to do is, after that opening paragraph, so we can see number 2 listed on here, include some skills. So it doesn't have to be a 2-column format like this. You can just go 1 column, that's completely fine. If you do that, please have the skills section straight afterwards. And what I mean by skills is not things like attention to detail or teamwork. Having read a lot of CVs in my time, I much rather see examples of those skills in the context of a job. So being able to back up the fact you can do these skills with case studies, with examples of work that you've done in previous roles, rather than just saying I'm very good at something, right? Carries a lot more weight if you can actually demonstrate why and the time that you were good at this thing. What we're looking for, and I will send an example CV out afterwards with this sort of stuff on, is basically you making it really easy for people to pull out key skills from your CV. So things like front end technologies, back end technologies, libraries, languages, and testing suites. So you could say, for example, front end, you could have React, HTML5, CSS, and any frameworks that you might have done as well. Again, it's really important to bear in mind that the person who's reading your CV, especially the first person, might not be technically minded, so they might not know that you know, or you could pick up Bootstrap because you've done CSS, for example. They might have just been given a job spec which has a bullet point list of skills that they need to hire, and if you've not included a CSS framework that you can do or you could learn, say for example like Bulma, then you may not get to that next stage where you do end up speaking to someone technical. So the same thing goes for testing suites. So include all the testing suites that you used on the course, include things like database technologies as well. I think it's PostgreSQL you guys use, and things like Express, all that sort of good stuff. Cool. Okay, like I said, I'm going to show you some examples after this. I don't think it's in the slides, but yeah, to give you an idea of the sort of things that you can include on there. What we then ask you to do is go into some detail about your work experience. And what we ask is that you include in your work experience Northcoders. Seems a little bit counterintuitive because people often think that that should be under education. But what we're looking to do is try and get all of the relevant skills to being a junior developer on one page. So, and specifically the first one. So it makes it really easy for people to pull out all of the key bits of information from that CV. So going chronologically in your work experience, you will have at the top Northcoders. So the dates that Northcoders, the dates that you were on the boot camp, and again, I would keep it nice and open. So something like junior software developer, trainee developer, something like that. Cool. And then basically go into a little bit of detail about what Northcoders is. So similar to what we were saying previously, full stack development bootcamp, and talk about some of the technical but also workplace skills that you've gained during your time on the course. So test-driven development, pair programming, communication, version control, agile. A lot of the stuff that you'll be doing on the project phase isn't just coding, but writing and creating user stories, understanding what the requirements are of our end user, and spiking out technologies. So one of the key things that we need to consider when we're developers is how do we choose the technologies that we make our application, and there's a trade-off between what's best for the job and what people know, right? At the end of the day, time's money in software development. So if we go out and decide that we want to learn a tech stack completely different from what we've done on the course, it's going to take time to do that, right? And obviously, if people are being paid and they're working as developers, that's time that company's not getting back. So what's the business case for learning these two new technologies? Why do we think they're going to solve the problem better? So yeah, all these different skills that you've picked up on the course, and then what we're going to include in that section is those portfolio pieces you've been working on. So there's going to be two pieces that are going to be on here. There's going to be Northcoders News. So that's going to be your example of the work that you've done on the course in our tech stack. So a full stack JavaScript application. And the second one is going to be your project at the end of the course. What we want you to include is a brief description of what each of these projects are. So for example, with the Northcoders News, you could say a full stack JavaScript application, news aggregation board, RESTful API backend, React, responsive React front end. Users can sort of upload articles, vote on them, comment, post, to a Postgres database, testing carried out using, and then the suites that you used. Cool. So again, what I would suggest is, just like we spoke about the technical skills, having a bullet point list of front-end technologies, back-end technologies, testing suites, and any other languages or libraries that you use as part of it. That way, if you're going for, say, a role where they're looking for some React experience, whoever's looking at your CV can very easily pick out the relevant portfolio pieces and have a look at them. Cool. What we also want as well is you to include links to the hosted version of it, but also the GitHub repo. And this applies to any link that you put on a CV. It should be the full URL. Reason being is, I'm sure people maybe have experienced this in Slack. They might have removed it in a new update, but previously you couldn't click through an embedded link. You just had to copy and paste the URL, and that same issue applies to a lot of other PDF and document reading software packages. So yeah, allow people to have a look at those portfolio pieces, LinkedIn, GitHub, all that sort of stuff, by including the full URLs on there. Same goes for the project piece. Obviously, you won't have a project put on there at this point. When you do send the CV across to be reviewed by me, don't worry about including that on there. If you want to include just some placeholder text to get an idea about spacing, we spoke about trying to keep it to 2 pages earlier. You're more than welcome to do that. And once you have added those projects on there, the final one, send it over again. I'm happy to take a look at it for you, okay, and re-review it. Cool. Does anyone have any questions before we move on to the rest of the CV? I'm just going to give you all a moment to catch up, because the stream's a little bit ahead, and we can continue from there, okay? While waiting as well, a quick point about other example and portfolio pieces that you want to include outside of the work you've done at Northcoders. That's totally fine. I strongly encourage you to do that. It's going to make your CV stand out, not just from other Northcoders grads, but bootcamp and junior level software developers. Don't include them under the Northcoders section. Include them under a personal bit further down, just so people don't get confused between what you've done in the course and what you've done in your own time. Cool. So yeah, does anyone have any questions before we continue? The CVs on these slides have changed a little bit since I last did this session. So yeah, I'll send you across some of the CVs that I used to use that give examples of some of these points that I was making. Cool. So what software would you recommend writing a CV in? I feel like MS Word won't cut it. It really depends. I mean, if you are looking specifically for a front-end developer role and you really want to demonstrate your design skills, there is software packages out there. I'd be happy to suggest a couple, actually. Let me make a note of that. I think people have used Illustrator and stuff like that before. Yeah, I mean, if you use obviously any sort of software suite that you'd use as a designer, that would be a benefit. But if you are more interested in either a full stack back-end role, don't feel like you have to go really design heavy with the CV. I think the most important thing that you can possibly do is make the content really easy to pull out those key points around and bullet points around your development skills. So it's really up to you. You know, if you feel you have quite strong design skills, feel free to go that direction. If you want to focus on just getting the content down on there, don't feel like you have to create a beautiful CV. The most important thing is that the content's on there. Vanessa asks, so we'll be sending our CVs to being reviewed. Is there a deadline for this? The earlier the better, I would suggest. Obviously, I do other stuff as well, you know. But yeah, the sooner I can look at your CV, the sooner I can review it, the sooner we can make any necessary changes, and we can start sending it across for roles. Yeah, so you know, if you have some time to dedicate to going over it over the next couple of days and can get it to me before the end of the week, that would be brilliant. Would you include side projects outside Northcoders, but ones that don't fall into previous work experience? Yeah, for sure. What I would suggest is having a section at the end where you can talk about personal achievements, which can include both technical things that you've done, so websites that you've maybe made for friends and family, personal projects that you've done to learn new technology, language, library. But similarly, include non-technical things as well. People hire people, right? You know, if you've got a hobby, say you play five-a-side football or you go climbing or something like that, feel free to include that sort of stuff on there as well. It makes it much easier for people to visualize you work in their organization, and it also it could be a conversation point that you can have with someone you go to interview. You know, maybe they are interested in the same things as you, or you know, you might have a mutual acquaintance or something like that. InDesign is great for CVs, but this is a paid product. I know people have used Illustrator before. There is another one that I can't remember, but I'll be happy to take a look and suggest to you all. But yeah, again, if you want to use Word, Google Docs, something like that, that is also fine. It's really up to you. Would a skills-based CV be a good idea? I'm not too sure what you mean by that, Rob. If you mean kind of like the skills list that are on this CV, that's not a problem at all. What I would suggest though is whatever CV you do, just make it really clear, really easy to see these portfolio pieces, because when your CV gets in front of a technical person, that's the thing they will be most interested in looking at. One of the cool things about software development is it's very easy to demonstrate what you can and can't do with portfolio pieces. So yeah, make sure that they are on there and they're easy to find. Cool. Right, I'm going to continue. People can feel free to continue asking questions, and then what I'll do is I'll probably pause in another 5-10 minutes and answer more of those questions. Okay, cool. All right, so moving on to the next CV, we've got something similar. This is a specific developer CV. As you can see, it covers a lot of the key points that we were talking about before. It doesn't have portfolio pieces on there, which as I mentioned, I think is really important. But it does talk a little bit about some of the technical skills that they've got, and bullet points, those key sections, so achievements and technologies, libraries, frameworks that they've done. Cool. So the things I would change with this is I would have obviously this first paragraph at the top. I would then probably have the skills after it, and then the work experience. But there's no reason why you couldn't have it this way around, to be fair. The important thing is you've got all the technical bits on the first page. We'll talk a little bit later about including non-technical roles and experience people might have. So previous roles that people have done, and how to include those on the CV, because there is still workplace skills that you bring along that you've learned in these roles. One of the reasons companies will often choose to hire Northcoders graduates rather than people who've come straight out of university is you have real world workplace skills and soft skills that come with doing that. Cool. The only thing I'll change on this is, like I said, having links. Yeah, no, that all looks pretty good. Let me just quickly refer back to my notes to make sure there's nothing that I'm missing. Like I said, full URLs when you have those. Yeah, I wouldn't refer to yourself as like a JavaScript developer specifically. Only about 30% of our grads go onto roles where they use a specific tech stack that we teach on the bootcamp. So again, if someone's completely non-technical is looking at your CV, they might not realize that you can transition over to other languages. So don't paint yourself into a corner by being too specific with how you label yourself or the types of roles that you're interested in. I think it's much better that you you are the person that's making the decision about whether or not a role's right for you than the organisation making that decision, if that makes sense. Cool. Okay. Do you have an example of how we might display portfolio pieces in CV? I can imagine in digital portfolio, but it's trickier imagining it in a non-link format. No, excellent question, Conway. As I said, there is a CV with examples of this on, but it's not included in these slides that I can see. I'm going to put a link. I'll actually just put a PDF of it up in the project Slack channel straight after this, and yeah, you can have a look at them. Do you mean repo links and hosted links, Katie says? Yeah, exactly. And what I would say is what we've learned is it's better to have the hosted link first and then the repo link. What's happened a couple of times is either HR recruitment people looked at the CV, they've clicked the GitHub link first and just thought that the application doesn't work or it's broken when they just see a load of code. So yeah, don't make any assumptions and really clearly label what each one is, and always the hosted version first. It's a really good question. Should we still refer to ourselves as full stack developer? Yep, full stack developer is fine. Junior developer, trainee developer, anything like that's okay. Yeah, just don't get too specific. But yeah, cool. But yeah, notice on this one here as well how they've like combined all the different frameworks on the front end side that they've used. Yeah, definitely do something like that. And also add the things that you use in during project phase. There'll be things that you pick up and things that will help distinguish you from your peers, other bootcamp graduates, junior software developers. So yeah, feel free to add any additional things. And similarly, things that you've done before the bootcamp as well. The general rule that I say to people is if it's something that you're comfortable talking about in an interview, include it. You know, you're going in as a junior developer. No one's expecting you to be an expert in Python because you made a really simple snake game with it, you know, a couple of years ago, right? But it's a conversation point, isn't it? And you can talk about maybe and contrast the differences that you've found between that language and what you've done in your time in the bootcamp as well. Yeah, no one's expecting you to be an expert in this stuff, so yeah, feel free to include it. Cool. As you've noticed at the bottom of this one, just before I do continue, they have just said references available on request. Anything like that's fine, right? At the end of the day, if including all your references details is bad for two reasons. One, because it takes up space where you could be talking about your technical skills, and two, because if your CV does get in the hands of a recruiter, they'll probably just end up bugging whoever you put on your CV as a reference for roles. So yeah, please don't do that to those people. You generally only ever get asked for references once you've been informally offered the role anyway. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with just saying references available on request. Cool. Okay, so as I was saying about being too specific about the role, just keep it nice and specific. Yeah, include a little bit of background about yourself. It's completely fine if that isn't specific to coding. Again, it just paints more of a picture of a rounded person, who you are and what you did beforehand, and some of the other skills in addition to coding that you can bring to the table. Often if you're going for a role in a startup or an SME, you may be asked to wear multiple hats and not just be a developer. You know, if you can talk to clients and other companies, it's a really useful skill. Make sure to focus on the transferable skills that you have, working to deadlines, managing operations, processes. As I was saying as well, having read a lot of CVs in my time, I'd much rather see examples of this. So during my time with Company X, so let's for a second imagine that this is under a specific role that you've done. Had to manage operations across a specific team during this time of the year or something like that. It's much better to show how and why you've achieved these things rather than just saying, take my word for it, trust me, I'm really good at this thing. Cool. Shouldn't be too long, aim for one paragraph, minimum two, that's fine. If I recall correctly, given that reference contact details of Tech Bridge. Oh, really? You know what? That makes a lot of sense, actually. I'm just reading this comment here about putting people's reference details. Yeah, it makes sense that that person hasn't given you acknowledgement and said that you're allowed to include their contact details. In fact, we actually have to send out a form that you'll need to sign specifically about GDPR, because we're going to be holding your CVs and giving that to companies. So you basically need to say that you're okay with us doing that. So you'll get that either end of today or early tomorrow, a sign request form to basically say that we're allowed to hold your CV on record and send it out to hiring partners. Cool. So like we were saying before, the little bit about technical skills, include everything on there that you've done. So don't just put JavaScript, any sort of libraries, frameworks that you've used. In addition, like we said, the HR person might not know that Node is a JavaScript library, or similarly that if you can do JavaScript, you can pick up Node, right? If you want to include a lovely graphic like this person has here, feel free to do so. Like I said, if you are looking for a specifically more sort of front-end design, user interface, user experience focused role, something like that is a good way of demonstrating your skills. If you've got any other non-technical skills that you think are relevant as well. You know, the examples that we have on this slide of Photoshop, Balsamic, Unity, feel free to include them as well. And like we were saying before, if you maybe want to include something like Python or Ruby that you're maybe not as confident with, feel free, or if you'd rather put basic understanding next to it, if you feel more comfortable. And again, it's going to give a list of 16 distinct CVs, right? One of the things we often get asked by companies is for people to showcase what makes them unique in terms of previous experience and what they get up to outside of the course as well. Very often what people are looking for in developers these days is people that aren't just a 9-to-5 developer, but actively involved with the community of meetups, events, and go out and explore new technologies and developments in the industry and come back and share some of these ideas and inspiration with the team. So yeah, it's a good thing to show. You are constantly looking to improve your skills and try new things outside of office hours. Cool. Yeah. Right. Actually, I've just seen this question here by Katie. I'm just going to do that first. I did a project in Python a year ago that's hosted but haven't touched Python since. Would you put that on a CV? For sure. So this is actually an allude and be relevant to the slide that's on the screen now. If you want to have a separate section at the bottom where it's sort of stuff like personal achievements, that's completely fine. It's interesting, right? Again, going back to what we're saying about telling a story about your journey, where you are now, it ties into that. So it sort of showcases why you got into coding and decided to do something like Northcoders, right? It's not a whim; it's something you've been thinking about for a while, and you enjoy being a developer. So yeah, that's totally fine. Cool. Getting back to these slides that we've got here, as it says in the first bullet point, you don't need to put specific dates about when you join roles or any time that you spent, studying at home, traveling, anything like that. You can put month and a year. It's okay. If you feel a role's not too relevant to your CV or the points that you want to make, it's completely fine going into slightly less detail about it. The examples that we have at the bottom of this CV is fine. So yeah, if you are running out of space, like I said, it's really important you try and keep it to 2 pages, just because if the person who's reading your CV is reading 50 or 100 in that day, it means they're going to pay more attention to what's actually on there. Feel free to do that. And as we said before, put the Northcoders bit in your work experience and at the top as well, so it's right on the front page of the CV. I would strongly suggest putting other educational experience on the second page, just simply because I'm sure whatever achievements you've done previously are fantastic. They're probably not relevant to being a software developer, hence why we're all at Northcoders Bootcamp, right? Cool. So yeah, as we mentioned, filling gaps, it's okay to put career break with a sentence about what you did, if at all. Reason being is it just means instead of being asked or questioned why there's a gap, when you go to an interview, you spend that time in the interview talking about more relevant things, if that makes sense. Cool. Okay, cool. So this actually quite nicely explains some of the points I was making before when saying how to lay out and complete that Northcoder section. So yeah, trainee, full stack, trainee junior developer, trainee software developer, engineer, something like that is all totally fine. And then, a summary about what Northcoders is. Like I was saying at the very start, don't assume that whoever's reading your CV has even ever heard of Northcoders before. So really spell out what it is for them, and please put your own unique spin on the CV, also on this specific section. The last thing any company wants to see is 16 CVs with exactly the same paragraph on it. It is something that we'll be looking for when we proofread them. Inject a little bit of personality into it and talk about maybe things that you did specific to your project as well, specific skills that you learned. Cool. And then I will answer your question, Katie, in a sec. I'm just going to finish with this slide. And then, as we spoke about the projects, your portfolio pieces, include them on there. So a brief description about what each one is. Again, please change this a little bit and reword it. And then, list out the technologies. I personally would suggest bullet pointing each of these technologies based on front end, back end, and testing suites. And like we said, have the links to it, right? As well as GitHub repos. And exactly the same with your final project as well. So what it is, how you made it, why you made it, who it's for, so like your user stories, requirements, that sort of stuff. Things like agile skills that you maybe developed by using a Kanban board, doing daily stand-ups, and obviously the links to it as well. Cool. So Casey, I see you finished high school 10 plus years ago. Would you still put it on there or just put uni experience? I feel ages ago since school. Me too, Katie. Go into not too much detail. Like we said, the reasons we're doing the Northcoders Bootcamp is because whatever we did previously probably wasn't that relevant to getting a job as a junior developer, or is maybe not quite as up to date as what we're learning on the bootcamp. So, I would say A levels, uni, something like that's fine. But again, don't feel the need to go into much detail in it. Just put A levels, including whatever you did, and I would generally say it's probably worth including, I think, GCSEs, including maths and English, because some roles is a minimum requirement you have a maths and English GCSE. Cool. Moving on to the next slide. Which sort of addresses the point that both of you are asking here. Keep it simple. Include grades if applicable. If your education skills are non-UK, please put your equivalent grades if you know them. Similarly, most companies are far more interested in the fact you've done the bootcamp, and like we were talking about, the skills that you've picked up in that time. One of the great things about software development is, as we said earlier, it's really easy to showcase what you do and don't know. There's nowhere to hide, is there, in terms of having those portfolio pieces on there. So I wouldn't worry too much about formal education on there. Cool. A couple of companies we work with are a bit old school about that, but the vast majority of hiring partners are far more interested in you and what you can and can't do, rather than what you got at GCSE or A levels. Cool. And so moving on to stuff that we've done outside the bootcamp. Really good to include any sort of speaking that you've done. So we've projects, presentations you've done at Northcoders, meetups and events that you regularly go to, or communities that you're actively a part of, other coding projects that you've done in your own time that demonstrate, your ability to pick up other languages quickly and passion for development, but also things that you get up to in your own time. If you do volunteering, charity work, if you're involved in sports, or maybe you're really into esports and you have like a team you game with online, anything like that really that sort of shows that you have a life outside of software development. And hopefully when we are all back in the office and not working remotely all the time, you can have things in common and things to talk about, right? People hire people, like we said before. So just tell a little bit about yourself and your motivations and interests. You ask, what do these companies think about foreign applicants? I've never studied in the UK. I mean, one of the great things about software development is JavaScript is JavaScript, whatever your first language is, right? So as long as you have the correct technical skills, it's not a problem. What people are far more interested in is, seeing what you've done technically and just getting to know you as well. Good question. So when I used to do recruitment, which was a few years ago now, more often than not, the better candidates were often EU nationals, or coming from further afield than that, just purely because the education system for software development was better in abroad. So yeah, companies are very open-minded. And I would say Northcoders wouldn't work with an organisation that wasn't. So yeah, don't worry about that. Cool. So just to summarise some of the key points that we made in the slides, and then I'll take any of the questions that people might have before we wrap up, be it about CVs or just more specifically getting jobs currently. Do include full URLs to portfolio pieces that you've created. Like we mentioned, it's really important that people can copy and paste those URLs. Mention any relevant extracurricular activities. I'm not sure if that's the right word when you're out of school, but I'm sure you all know what we mean. Have no more than 2 pages if you can. Make it really to the point. Include phone number and email. I'd say it doesn't hurt, does it? Like we said there, address not really important. And attention to detail. Really make sure that the grammar in there is solid, spelling's correct, and you're proud that it is demonstrate to you as a person and your abilities. Don't leave gaps in your career history, and don't be too specific about your tech interests at this point. If you've got a really clear idea of what it is you want to do after the course, that's fantastic. One of the reasons we do sessions like this is to help you build that up, and we'll be doing more stuff with you going forwards to help you get an idea about the type of role you want. But it's much better you make that decision by meeting a company, getting to know them. I was going to say have a look around their offices. That's probably not going to happen at this point in time. Then they make that decision just based on you saying you want to be a React developer on your CV, right? It's fantastic if that is what you want to do, but keep that to yourself if that makes sense. Cool. Questions? What do people have? I'm just going to wait a few seconds for the stream to catch up. Just while we're allowing that as well, I'm just going to quickly talk about some of the other things that we're going to be doing after this as well. As I mentioned, there's going to be SAM request forms going out to all of you, GDPR notifications so we can hold your CVs on our system and send them out to companies on your behalf. In addition as well, I'm going to be setting up specific graduate Slack channels for everyone. So this will be your main point of contact with myself and the partnerships team going forwards about roles that you are interested in. So basically, if you see a role that you would like to know more about, either a hiring partner role on our jobs board, or just you maybe want me to see if there's someone I know in a company who to put you in touch with that you've seen a role at. Let us know. I'll give you the scoop on what our business is like to work at, who to speak to, and any of advice that we can give. And if it is a hiring partner and we're helping you in that process, we'll give you updates on things like tech tests, screening calls, remote interviews, and chase feedback for you as well in that channel. It's the best point of contact with us, short of obviously, giving us a call, Slack call, anything like that. You're always welcome to reach out and get in touch with us. Happy to give you any advice. And I think one of your tutors will be included in there as well, who can give you feedback either on tech tests or your Northcoders news portfolio piece as well. Have you noticed any decrease in job offers / hire requests from hiring partners since the lockdown? If so, how long do you expect it to last? Being honest, yes, that there has been a significant slowdown in job offers, or maybe hiring being temporarily postponed. Certainly within the first couple of weeks as companies try to adjust to working remotely. A lot of companies were in a great position because they already had a great culture around working remotely, but similarly a lot of maybe more traditional organisations honestly really struggled in the first week or two. They may have had servers and systems that are only accessible from a certain IP address or in the office, and being set up and ready to be able to work remotely is something that caught them. I think it caught a lot of companies off guard. That being said, though, I've had some really positive conversations with companies, both towards the end of last week and start of this week as well, that are looking to have people. A few companies have said, it's going to be maybe on either a fixed term contract or freelance basis, just simply because it's so hard to, first of all, onboard people at this current point in time. Working remotely. A lot of companies and developers do work remotely, but onboarding people remotely is a mystery to some companies. They are sort of learning as they go along. And I think also for cash flow purposes as well. But yeah, we are starting to see the shoots of a bounce back. And one of the great things about the industry we're going into is being software developers. It is one of the industries where it is easier to work remotely. We have obviously seen some companies pause and freeze hiring, but similarly, companies, such as there was an article earlier today about how well Zoom are doing. There's another couple of companies that we work with that have done. I don't know if well's the right word out of this, but I've seen some quite brisk business off the back of what's happening in the world. And you look at the likes of Sainsbury's and AO, they can't hire developers quick enough. So yeah. I mean, the companies we've spoken to that have said they are postponing or pausing hiring have basically said they're going to relook at it every couple of weeks, and we are keeping very closely in touch with these companies to find out when they will be looking to hire, and also share any knowledge that we have based on doing remote tech tests and interviews with people, but also perhaps advice that we can give them that other companies have learned in this process. Cool. I hope that answers your question. Obviously, if you've got any more specific points, feel free to ask them in the chat. Katie asks, do you expect that we'll have tech tests for a lot of companies? I mean, tech tests are probably one of the easier things to do remotely. We'll give you some sample tech tests soon, and these are real tech tests that have been sent across to our students previously. But yeah, very often they'll send you either something not too dissimilar to what you did when you first joined the course and qualified, but more often than not, it will be like a GitHub repo with a README of a list of instructions that once you've done it, we'll say within a certain time frame, you will send across to one of their developers and they will review what you've done. I think what people are finding tricky is the onboarding side of things. But yeah, the tech tests are still getting sent out. Screening calls are still getting done as well. It's just the sort of the hiring bit that's taking a little bit longer. But as I said, we are, I think, at the start of a bounce back. It'll be interesting to see where we're at in a week's time. And yeah, I'll be keeping regular touch with all of our current students and graduates about that as well. When can we expect to have one-to-ones with a career advisor to talk about what kind of companies are a good fit for us and vice versa? Good question. I will be scheduling in one-to-ones with all of the Manchester-based students, and Lucy will be doing it with the people based in and around Leeds. As soon as we get a first draft. No, I would say a final draft of your CV across. So I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but ideally, sort of Thursday, Friday this week, I can start getting some of those scheduled in. Once the grad channels are up and live with all of you, we'll arrange a time to do those one-to-ones. It'll probably just be on Hangouts or Slack or something like that. And yeah, get to know you, your motivations, what you're looking for in a role, and I suppose provide some advice about the type of roles and positions that would be a good fit for you off the back of that. And obviously talk about any companies we know that are actively hiring that would fit those criteria. So yeah, the sooner you can obviously get a CV across, the sooner we can do that, and the sooner we can start getting you out for roles as well. So if you have some time tonight, tomorrow, Thursday, Friday to get a really high quality CV ready, and we have something to talk about in that one-to-one, we can get it booked in. Cool. So as soon as that really. What would you say is a normal time requirement for a tech test? My boyfriend, when interviewed, had a company give him a full project to do in 8 hours, and another sent him one piece of kata. It depends on the role. In my experience, both anecdotally, knowing Northcoders graduates have gone stuff, and obviously my friends that have done the boot camp and who are now sort of junior mid-level developers. Yeah, it really depends on the position. I generally find front-end roles that they're looking more for a project because they're looking for your design skills as well, and maybe to create a basic website. Back-end full stack roles, almost always some sort of kata or a coding problem. The idea is you'll then talk through the problem with one of their developers, probably in a call at the moment, considering everyone's lockdown. Um, I would say, unless specifically stated otherwise, always do test-driven development. Don't forget the skills and the processes you've learned on the bootcamp. What sometimes they might ask for in a tech test is you specifically not to do test-driven development, and then you will talk about the type of tests that you write or implement on that code if you were putting it into production. But yeah, that being said, I spoke to a company earlier today that were looking to get a job spec across to us soon for a freelance developer role. It's going to be primarily mobile and front end, Swift and Android Studio, but they're more interested in seeing pseudocode, so your problem solving skills and how you go about solving a problem. Not too dissimilar to what you do when you first apply to Northcoders. Katie asks, are we sending CVs to you? Yes, I'm going to set up grad channels for you all over the next couple of days. And once you have a final draft of that CV, so it's something that you would be happy to go across to a company. So, you think it's pretty much there. Obviously, I'll give you some feedback and suggestions for improvements, but I am only one man, and there's going to be a lot of CVs. Please have something that is, close to being something ready to go out. Send it to me in that Slack channel, and I'll review it, and then we can get that one-to-one scheduled in. Cool. Any other questions or anything like that? As I mentioned, I'm going to send across that sample CV I spoke about. Please make them all unique, rewrite the paragraphs, and make them personal to you. Like I said, people hire people and they want to hear a story, what your motivations were for doing the course, where you're currently at, and where you see yourself in the future. It helps them picture you in their organisation, and it also means people aren't getting a pile of identical CVs. Some of the companies we may work with as hiring partners as well could also ask for cover letters. So just a paragraph or two talking about why you're interested in that specific organisation and why you think you'll be a good fit for them as well. We will let you know before applying if that specific organisation is looking for a cover letter. So don't worry about that, and we will take a look at it before it gets sent out as well. Cool. Any other questions before we wrap up? Just give you a few seconds to catch up. Cool. Okay. Like I said, I'm not very good at filling up dead space on these sorts of things. So, yes. Just give it a few more seconds. Obviously, if people have questions that they've forgotten now or spring to their minds after this, I appreciate I've given you a lot of information, so you might need a little bit of time to process some of it before you do come back to me with questions. Like I said, there's going to be the Slack channels. I'm always available, messages, calls, anything like that, let me know. It's always good to catch up with you and find out how you're getting on, not just while you're on the course, but also afterwards as well. The more you keep in touch with us and the more you let us know what's going on in your life, the more we can help you with career support and find roles that are going to be a good match for you. And like I said, I obviously have a pretty big network at this point now of people that have both graduated the course, but also friends working as developers. If it's a company we don't work with directly as a hiring partner, but still looks like it could be a great match for you, I'm always happy to suggest people to talk to, what they're looking for, tech stack, all that sort of stuff, right? So just because a company's not on our jobs board, like I said, there's only so much time I have to speak to people. I'm always happy to send your information across, put in a good word for you, all that sort of stuff. The most important thing for us is you all get jobs you enjoy. That's why we're here at Northcoders, right? Because invariably we didn't enjoy what we did before. And support you going forwards as well. Anything I can do to help, happy to do so. All right. Cool. I think there doesn't seem to be any more questions coming in. So what I'm going to do is sign off. But yeah, like I said, get that sample CV across to you um, in the Slack channel. And yeah, just say thank you for your time. Yeah, some really good questions in the chat. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and yeah, look forward to seeing some of your CVs and yeah, getting to speak to you all in the near future and learning a little bit more about your motivations and the type of role that you're looking to go across to. Okay, my stomach's rumbling, so yeah, that's my cue to go. I think. All right, cheers. Thank you everyone. Speak soon. All right, bye. How do you do it? Cool.